As I said, my name is Cari Schultz. I'm the Director of College Counseling here at Columbus School for Girls. I have been in the College Counseling Department here for 8 years. Previous to that, I worked on the other side. I worked in college admissions for 7 years at 2 different institutions in the state of Ohio. So what I hope tonight is to provide a little bit of insight for both parents and students about the process so that we can hopefully reduce the stress that you might be feeling about college admissions. For me to get an idea of who's here tonight, how many of you have had a son or daughter go through the college admissions process before? Okay, so a handful. And then how many middle school families do we have? Okay, and then high school? Great, just gives me a sense. Well, these are some of the topics that I'm going to be touching on very quickly, and I should give you a disclaimer. I do have 2 degrees in communication, so I can talk. So I'm going to try to squeeze in as much as possible for you in this time. So what I wanted to start with was giving you a little bit of an idea of what the current college landscape is. And one of the best places to get that information is from our national organization, NACAC, the National Association for College Admissions Counseling. This is an organization that's been around since the 1930s. It governs people who do what I do, people who work on the admissions side, gives us sort of guidelines, good practices, but they also do a great deal of research. And every year they come out with the State of College Admissions Report. And I found one thing in particular that I just really wanted to pull out for you families. And this is the 2014 report, which is based on 2013 data. We'll get the new report here coming up in the spring. In 2013, the average selectivity rate at 4-year institutions actually went up to 64.7. It had been at 63.9. And this is good, because what that means is that colleges admit nearly 2/3 of applicants. I know the U.S. media would like to have you think otherwise by the small subset of colleges that they tend to focus on, where you hear 5%, 9%, 10%, 12% admit rates, when in fact nearly 2/3 of applicants are being accepted. So it's not maybe quite as stressful as what they might have us believe when you focus in on such a narrow set, when there are roughly, anyone want to take a guess, roughly how many colleges in the United States? Oh, you might have hit the nail on the head. Did you say 4,000? Nicely done. Roughly 4,000 colleges in the United States. So when you think about nearly 2/3 of students applicants being admitted, that sort of changes the scale of what you're seeing. Now, looking at then, what are the factors that colleges are considering, and I'm certainly going to let our 2 college experts over here talk a little bit more about that, but just to come at it from the high school side of things, and from the NACAC report, it does show that consistently over many, many years, these same 3 top factors always come up as top 3 factors in the admissions review process. And the 2 combined being the top 2, grades in high school curriculum, both things that you will find on your high school transcript. Now, the one thing I caution you when you read grades is don't confuse that with GPA, because we have several different high schools represented here tonight, and I'm willing to guess that the vast majority of us have different grading scales and different GPA scales. Colleges understand that, and they understand that we have our own way in each school of doing things. So what they're really going to do is get down to the individual sort of nit and gritty of what are the grades you are earning in the individual classes that you are taking. And that's where the curriculum comes into play, because they're looking at the individual courses that you are taking. But also understand that when they do that, it's in the context of your high school. So they look at what opportunities have you had in your high school. They're not expecting you to take courses that haven't been offered in your school. So it's looking at what has your curriculum been based on the opportunities provided in your own high school. They're also going to look at trends. Do you have an upward grade trend? Do you have a downward grade trend? Not as good. Have you just been consistently strong? Looking at how those grade trends move on your transcript. And also understanding that, you know, for those of you who are in middle school or making your way up to freshman year, that middle school transcripts are not reviewed. It's high school transcripts. And that freshman year is a little ways off, but also understand that when you're taking something like Algebra 2, that might lead in well to pre-calculus, which leads into calculus. So you are still setting the foundation of what you're going to be working on through your transcript. And then the third item on there, test scores. So test scores are the third most important factor in the review process, but also important to note that there are now over 850 colleges that are test optional. Have any of you heard of the test optional movement? Some. So what test optional means is that the student has the option of whether he or she wants to submit test scores in their application review process. If they don't feel that the test score adequately represents their ability at those schools that are test optional, they don't have to submit it. If you feel it is a good representation, then you can send it. You know, I certainly wish test optional was around in my day. There are many schools that are offering this option, including, as I said, 850 plus, but you have schools like Bowdoin in Maine, a highly selective liberal arts college, Denison just down the road here in Ohio. You also have, private medium-sized research institutions like George Washington and American. So there are a variety of schools. So while it is an important part of the process, that really depends on the schools that your student is looking at. Among the next most important factors then here, coming in order, student essay. And this is important because in the application process, students, this is where your voice comes in. Your transcript is a sort of data collection of your academic achievement. Your activities list represents your interests and what you like, but where your personality really starts to come out more is in your essay. And colleges are interested in getting to know you. They want to determine how well you'll fit into who they are as an institution, and the essay is one of the best places they can garner that information. Demonstrated interest. This is has been a growing trend. When I started on this side of the desk 8 years ago, this was something some schools might consider, but it's really grown, and sadly for me, for many schools now, it's more important than the counselor letter of recommendation and the teachers. And also should say though, again, everything always goes back to the individual college. While some colleges highly consider demonstrated interest, for others, it's not something they track. It's not important. And by what demonstrated interest is that's looking at, it's not just about the colleges courting the students anymore, it's about the students showing that they are in fact also interested about the institution, because they need to enroll a class, and to enroll a class, that's something that can be helpful for some institutions, is knowing who might be more likely to enroll. But again, not a hard and fast for every college or university. Some ways you can demonstrate interest are by visiting a campus. If the college representative comes to your high school, going to that visit. It can be emailing your college admissions counselor, the college rep. It can also be, for some schools that really track it, something as detailed as they send you an email and they can track whether or not you open it and whether or not you click on a link inside. Now, does this mean you need to be hyper vigilant and do that for every college you hear from? No, but certainly if you're interested in an institution and you know they look at demonstrated interest, it might be something to consider. Then looking at the extracurricular activities, and we'll talk about this a little bit more detail later, but what it needs to be is activities of your interest, not activities that you think the colleges want to hear. Other things that they're considering, information for student background. These are generally things that are fixed, things that you don't have control over. They can be considered what colleges might call institutional goals that they have to reach as they're shaping their incoming class. What are some of the goals they have and they need to fulfill in that class? It's looking at realizing that diversity in all forms is so important to the educational experience, and so making sure that's represented in that entire class that they're admitting into admissions, into the institution. And it's also important to know that you may not know what the institutional goals are, and they can change often. They might need a harp player for their sensational orchestra 1 year, and then they might not need one again for 4 years, or they might need a new starting quarterback. They might not need that again for a few years. So it's keeping in mind that these are things that you don't want to, in some ways, let steal your peace, because you can't control them and change them, and you don't always necessarily know what they are, but they are considered in the process. So knowing what they're looking for in the college process, what should students do now? First and foremost, enjoy school. High school is not just a means to an end. It's about growth and development, and you should enjoy that. It's also about seeking appropriate academic challenge. And when we say appropriate, that means balance. It's about pushing yourself, but not overdoing it, realizing your limits. Thinking about, there's a question that I remember from my time on the college side that was asked about, well, is it better to take the AP course and get a lower grade, or is it better to take the regular course and get a higher grade? And in all actuality, the truth would be take the AP course and get the A. Well, we know that's not always possible, so it's about finding the appropriate balance in your academic rigor. There are critical skills that you can learn now in high school that will help you immensely in college, such as time management skills. You're going to have a lot more free time. Learning how to manage that is key. Also learning how to seek extra help. In general, when you get to college, the professors are going to lean on you for you to come in when you need help. Sometimes in high schools, teachers can be a little bit more forward in noticing that you need help and coming to you, whereas in college, it's more of your responsibility. So learning how to go to teachers now in high school while you're in that comfort of that environment is something that is a skill that will really help you when it comes time to reaching out to professors on the college end. Whoops. There we go. Okay. And reading and writing skills. So just reading more can be helpful. Not only does it help with standardized test scores, because it gets you more familiar with vocabulary and other things that you're going to be seeing on standardized tests, when you read more, you're also better at writing yourself. And again, remember, your college essay is going to be your writing and the one place your voice comes out in the application. Pursue extracurricular activities. And this is, I highlighted on here in my notes, not just for resume building, but for the pursuit of happiness. I think there's a big thing nowadays in talking about finding your passion, and I think we're even going to hear a little bit more about that later. But what I would say is follow your curiosity. There was a New York Times article recently that says, it's titled, "Our Push for Passion and Why It Harms Kids." At 13 and 17 years old, 13 to 17, you don't necessarily have to have passions, know what you're passionate about. But you need to feel empowered to follow your curiosity and to explore and having that willingness to explore. And then copies of best papers. This is just something to keep in mind because you never know what might spark an idea for an application essay, or even maybe there's some parts of a paper that you can take and use in your essay. Financial aid, and now I did change this instead of what can students do now to what can we do now, because realizing that the financial component does sometimes fall a little bit more in the parents' lap than it does the students. And so there are things, I know you'll hear more about financial aid, but there are things that you can be doing now. And so I tried to list some resources that can be helpful to you. The College Board website that has a scholarship search feature, a college savings calculator, and then there are other financing college calculators. Every college has a net price calculator where you can go and input family income information. Some that give merit aid will also allow you to put in academic information, so then what they give you in return is an estimated cost to attend that institution. So while you're not getting your specific financial aid package at this point, your student has to apply for admission and apply for financial aid, and that can't happen till senior year. You can get an idea of what some institutions might cost for your family now. And then some tips for parents. One is let your student drive the process. We always say that happens, but your high school counselor and you parents should also still be in the car so that the student is the one who's going to be going and attending this institution, but the family and counselor should be a part of that process because they're all there to help you, and parents, we know you're a part of the decision-making process. It's where, maybe if you think of it like, when you're taking your driver's test and, you have that, your driver's instructor can reach over and grab the wheel, and I think they have their own set of brakes. Parents, sometimes you might want to pump the brakes a little bit. But if you're not in the car, you can't pump those brakes, or you can't turn the wheel because, hey, I want to make that stop at that exit. So it's a yes, student-driven process, but family needs to be a part of it. Outline expectations early. This is a huge one. And examples of that would be geographic parameters. If you're not okay with your son or daughter going all the way across internationally for their undergraduate experience, or you don't want them going as far as California, those are things that your son or daughter needs to know up front, so he or she can drive her search in an appropriate way that meets with your expectations. Same thing comes with finances. Letting your son or daughter know what might be realistic for your family is helpful. That is not to say that that means colleges automatically come off your list, because you don't know what the bottom line cost might be without seeing the financial aid package and scholarship. But it does mean that you're realistic with them up front, because what you don't want, and it happens all the time unfortunately, is where your student explores, falls in love with a school, never realizing that the financial component needs to be a consideration, and then they're admitted and think they can go, but the reality is that you have to have the conversation then about this financial aid package isn't going to work for us. Whereas he or she can still apply and know going through that, hey, this is something we're going to have to consider to see if it can work for us, and then move forward. So it just sets realistic expectations. And be open to colleges and universities you aren't familiar with. This is, kind of something that we college counselors, high school counselors get kind of geeky excited about when a student has a wonderful experience. I still think of one of our students who is now going to be graduating from college and going on to her top choice optometry school, and she ended up going somewhere at the beginning of the process that she had never heard of. But I think of, gosh, if she hadn't been open-minded to exploring that institution, how might her process have been different? And she, is now one of the greatest ambassadors for that institution. So there are a lot of institutions out there that can be a great fit for you. So it's just being open to exploring them. And that's also a great opportunity to ask your high school about, your high school counselor about things that they might think would be a great fit for you. And parents, where it said, I just wanted to mention help with organization. This is really just where you know your son or daughter and what he or she needs. There are some students that operate through this process like a boss, and they need little help or assistance. If your son or daughter is like that with managing deadlines, assignments, and things in school, knowing that is great, and knowing if you have someone who needs a little bit more nudging to go through, that's important too, because that might carry over in how they handle the process. And then just some other helpful resources for you. There's a few books on here. Fisk Guide to Colleges is one of my favorites. A nice complement to that is the Insider Guide to Colleges. I always say a complement because it's written student perspective, so I think you need a little bit of both. And then some websites and some other things. And if you want to see more about the colleges that are test optional, I listed a website there for you. So just additional things. And don't forget your teachers went to college, so they can be great resources to ask about their experiences. Alums from your high school that have gone on or maybe still in those institutions. And then I just had 2 ending points that I wanted to leave you with. So, I hope you remember a lot of what I said, but if not, these are 2 things that would be key. And one is going back to one of my very first points, and that is, if you get anxious, remember, colleges accept nearly 2/3 of applicants. It is not just 5% everywhere. And then the second, our former president of NACAC, Frank Sachs, has a wonderful quote that so many of us use all the time, and that is, college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. Thank you.